Well, hello everyone. It's Sybil Starr here to talk about the Gemini New Moon, which occurs on Friday, May 22nd at 10:38 a.m. Pacific time. It occurs at 2 minutes 4 degrees of Gemini. We have 6 points in Gemini, which gives it a lot of Gemini energy. We have the sun and moon, Mercury, Venus, the asteroid Vesta, and the North Node. And you might be wondering why I am sitting in front of these hieroglyphs right here. And I'm gonna, well, I do want to show you the chart. I also have the chart to share, and I do want to show that to you. So I think I will show you the chart, and then I will talk about why I'm sitting in front of these hieroglyphs and what that means. Okay, so we're going to screen share here. All right. So, all right, hopefully you all can see me here. And so this is the chart of the new moon. I thought it might be helpful to be able to see it, to give you a visual to look at. So this is an Aries chart. It's an Aries 0-point Aries chart. So it's so you can just kind of see the energy a little better. So we have, look at all these points down here in Gemini. So we have this moon, the sun, Venus, Mercury. Oh gosh, we also have Hygeia. I didn't realize we also had a Hygeia there. We actually have 7 points. Hygeia is an asteroid, asteroid of healing. We have Vesta. She is a priestess energy, and the North Node. So you can see that's just simply a tremendous amount of energy in Gemini. Okay. I think we'll go back and we'll talk about that, and then and I do want to say one more thing. So we have here the sun and the moon are in a square to Mars. Mars is up here in Pisces, so that's a square, that's a challenge. And we also have the planet Neptune here in a square to this whole complex. So there's lots of different energies dancing together at this Gemini new moon. We're also going to be talking about Pluto and Jupiter and Uranus, and we'll be talking about these other planets too, but I really just wanted to point this out to you. Okay. All right. So why am I sitting in front of these hieroglyphs? Well, first off, let me just say a little bit about Gemini, then you'll understand better. Gemini is the sign of communication. It is the sign of learning, teaching, all the different ways we use words. And it's also, of course, the sign, it's the heretic, the sign of questioning. There is no sacred cows. There are no sacred cows with Gemini. Gemini is the heretic. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is God, who is the god of the mind and how we perceive the world. And in the tarot, the magician card is Mercury, or Mercury is the magician card. And so that really brings in the concept of magic. And that's what brings in the hieroglyphs. The Egyptians believed that words were magic, that words were power. When we spoke something, it actually gave it power, it gave it life. We know that thoughts are powerful, and beliefs are powerful, and they all shape our world. But when we say something out loud, we actually give it power. And that's why it's important to say something properly, to say what you mean and mean what you say, because you're putting it out into the world, and you're giving it power in the world that way. And that is a big piece as well of the it's just remembering that thoughts create. And I'm going to get more into that. And I wanted to talk about this Mars, which is in a square to this Gemini new moon. Mars is at 6 degrees of Pisces. And so the Pisces, Mars in Pisces can be a little misdirected. It can be a little lost sometimes, not quite knowing where it's going. And so And that's okay, because there are times we need to wander. As they say, all who wander are not lost, that you may not know your exact way around right now. And in my spiritual tradition, we have a way of saying how to set an intention, which is putting a prayer in motion. And the other piece of that is so you set the intention, you put that prayer in motion, then you get behind that prayer. You let that prayer lead the way, that it will unfold, that to believe that your prayer has been heard and that it is unfolding in ways that you just simply need to trust, and things will show up at the right time in but it is allowing that prayer to lead, and so that's what it feels like now. It's about trusting your inner guidance. That's about letting, how it's called, following the energy and trusting your inner guidance. That is what is a big piece of what is happening right now. The other piece of just simply Mars and Mars and in aspect to planets in Gemini is about the use of our voice. It is about the power of our voice and what we say and what we what we say and create in the world with our voice, and that our walk and our talk needs to be lined up. We say something, we need to be doing it, or we don't really have any effect. And the other thing is to always recognize with the power of your words that they can hurt. Mars is the warrior. So there's a whole lot of consciousness wanting to be brought in now about the power of our words. The next thing I wanted to talk about is Mercury and Venus together. Venus retrograde, Mercury in Gemini, that conjunction, and in a pretty tight square, really tight square, to Neptune. It's actually an exact square, so it really gives it a lot more power. And so what kind of words? Well, first off, Venus and Mercury together really talks about the beauty of words, the sweetness of words. So it's a very creative time, and especially an aspect to Neptune. Venus and Neptune are both the energies, archetypes of creativity, of allowing spirit to move through us in ways of creating beauty. And in Mercury, with Mercury and Venus, it would be words. Okay. The other piece is it's so important to speak from the heart, and it is a time to stay connected to friends. As we go through these times of crisis, and we are in times of crisis, it's so important to gather our friends around us and to speak to them and to remember the power of your words and to stay connected, to be in communication with others. It's so important. And it's also bringing in that memory of pulling down the veil to remind us that we really are all connected on a spiritual level. As we know, as this virus, as it travels, and it is traveling through the field and is traveling in ways that are not yet really understood. I mean, there is contagion, but there's much more to it than that, at least. And I'm just going to share this. This is from my perspective, and as spirit, as it comes through me, and what spirit is telling me, that it is much bigger. It is just simply much bigger than what we understand it to be. Not that it's a worse illness, but that it is a bigger teacher. It is a big teacher. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the nodes of the moon. So the nodes of the moon have changed. They change about every 18 months. And our nodes have been traveling in Capricorn and Cancer. And now they are in Sagittarius and Gemini, or Gemini, let's say Gemini, Sagittarius. And the nodes of the moon, what they have to do with, their points of destiny. When they're activated as points of karma and dharma. We often are at a crossroads when the nodes are moving, or when the nodes are activated, and they're activated at this new moon. And so the south node of the moon, and what they actually are, and I've spoken about them before, as the moon orbits around the earth, there are points that travel with her. My understanding is like an energy vortex. I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to misstate something. That's about the best I can say it. But the Vedic astrology, we've known about the nodes of the moon for many thousands of years. And so the south node of the moon is where the energy comes in. and that is in Sagittarius. And the south node of the moon has to do with what we are releasing as well as gifts we are bringing forward. The north node of the moon is our way forward. It is the North Star. And it really is our direction. And yet there is to be an integration of the energy of the signs involved. And so the south node of the moon in Sagittarius is about beliefs. There is a big piece here about releasing old, outdated beliefs that no longer serve us, about ourselves, about our world, about our understanding of the world. That our beliefs can be prohibitive in allowing us to move forward. The North Node is in Gemini, and as I talked about, it is the heretic, it is the questioner, questioning everything. And, good science is asking the right questions. And that's how we learn. Nothing is ever really completely settled because there's so much that we don't know, and the world is constantly trying to show us different ways and different ways of understanding. And so a big piece of this is about releasing old belief systems that no longer support our we're moving into a time where our understanding of the nature of reality is changing. It's growing. As we understand more through quantum physics, we are learning so much more about the cross-section of science and spirituality. And that's why so many people who study physics ultimately end up studying metaphysics, because they begin to see the expansiveness of reality, and our beliefs can hold it. And so we are being asked to move forward, to open our minds, to believe the impossible, because the impossible is probably what's true. And so here's another, I want to screen share again. It's a great quote I wanted to share with you that I felt was really appropriate for this. Okay, and here it is. It is better to keep your mind open by wonder than permanently closed by belief. Yeah, I think that's really important. This is where we are. It's better to keep your mind open by wonder than permanently closed by belief. Okay, and so the last thing I want to talk about is, science being about asking the right questions. The last time I did the video, I talked about the fairy tale of where something happened. The fairy godmother who wasn't invited to the party, or whomever, cast a spell, and the land was sick. And there was a sickness in the land, is the way they would say it. And it's like an energy. It's like something like the veil that is over the land, and the people are in a trance. And usually, and sometimes how the spell is broken is by asking the right question. And the question I asked was, how does this virus serve us? And the answer I got was that it serves our awakening, which is a very spiritual answer, and I can see it on many levels. But a more practical questions also need to be asked. And one that comes to mind to me is, as far as relation to this virus and how it is traveling, to help us understand it, we need to know what the places that our hotspots have in common. We can't just say, oh, it's because they didn't have, things weren't closed and on time. No, there's much bigger issues here. And where I want to go with this is, I'm going to talking about where science and spirituality meet, which is quantum physics, which is a piece of the Neptune, and it's also a piece of Uranus. And Uranus is now in Taurus. And Uranus is about awakening, and Uranus is the They call it the divine mind. Neptune, the divine heart. Uranus is the divine mind. And the divine mind is now in conjunction with Mother Earth, is into the sign of Taurus, which is so much about Mother Earth. So it feels like there is a piece of quantum information wanting to come through that the coronavirus is bringing, where that place of science and spirituality meet in our bodies. Mother Earth and our bodies, matter. And this is a force of nature. And there is an ongoing conversation that I have been following between different scientists about ever since and I've just studied it recently, but starting about 30 years ago with the advent of the molecular microscope, they started recognizing that because they said they can see they're just a few layers away from what they call the God particle with the molecular microscope. So they can see at this really tiny, almost invisible level. And what they're seeing viruses and exosomes. And they're in places, and what exosomes are is toxic material that is released from our cells that has either DNA or RNA in it, just like viruses. And some scientists feel that exosomes and viruses are one and the same thing. Others feel that they are so small or that they are two different things, but sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And so it really brings up cause and effect, okay? Because I feel there's a doctor named Dr. Zach Bush, who says this virus is unmasking the toxicity in our cells. And this has been the conversation that has been going on. We know we have poisoned Mother Earth. I mean, we know this. And now we're seeing how we've poisoned ourselves. I mean, and it feels like the virus is unmasking where that intersection meets, inner and outer, as within, so without. And it's not just in our physical world, it's in our consciousness. It's the poisoning in our collective consciousness is coming. The virus is unmasking it because what they're seeing is more than one of what I'm reading. More than one disease here, they think. Well, some appear to be viral, other appears to be toxicity. And so there's just a whole lot opening here if we have the willingness to pursue it, to see, because we know we poisoned our world. And we are put in time out. We are in the great pause. And this is the initiation, is the great pause that we are in. On one hand, we know that we have this virus, and like I said, Spirit is just telling me this virus is so much bigger than a quote virus. It is part of our awakening, but the awakening to several things. One, of how we have poisoned our world, and that it is karma. So I'm going to talk now about the Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto conjunction, and I'm going to go to screen share one more time, just to show you where that is. Okay. Here we are. Okay. All right. So I want to go back to the chart. Okay. So here we are. We're at, here's Jupiter, and here's Pluto. Here's Jupiter. We actually have Athena in here as well, and Saturn. This big conjunction, but Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn have been traveling together pretty much ever since the first of the year. And I'm going to stop screen sharing now. I just wanted to show you that. And we knew when they came together, it was going to be a big year. And Pluto is the lord of death. Saturn is the lord of karma. And Saturn often brings to us, showing us that we're reaping what we have sown. And it feels like we are being put in this pause to really rethink our world, to rethink our life, and to recognize we can't go back to where we were. Saturn is limiting. We just can't keep expanding and expanding and expanding. This is Mother Earth pulling us back in to be able to start to make things right, because she is shifting into higher levels of consciousness, higher dimensions, and we are going with her. But things need to be made right again. And as we can see by this great pause, so much of nature is starting to thrive again in ways that it hasn't. But yet we have a lot to clean up and do. And at the same time, um, Pluto is the god of death, and he shows us where there is decay. He shows us what is breaking down. It is so, and Pluto is very much about initiation into shamanic realms. That's why sitting in front of this is also so appropriate, as collectively we are going through an initiation and going through the darkness. So that, it's like the snake shedding its skin, but we're seeing the breakdown, and so it's like the veil of illusion is falling, and if we can look at it, when we can really look at the darkness, when we can look at what is decaying, which Capricorn is our structures that hold our civilization, and they can't hold us. They're just not able to hold us, and that new ones need to be created. Is like these structures are decaying, or they are decaying. And also, we're also seeing what is a pretty blatant, to me, opportunistic power grab by our politicians, by world leaders. And we just can't close our eyes to it. It's not like I'm going to go into conspiracy theories. And the truth is, there's truth in conspiracy theories. There's truth in everything. Everything holds a piece of the truth. That's why it's so important to keep our mind open. Nobody owns the truth. And it is our path and our journey to find it as a collective and personally. And we can relate this time to taking the red pill on the matrix. It is time to, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to change our programming and to change direction. And Pluto is always a time of healing as well. It's an opportunity to heal, it's the beginning of the healing process, when we can acknowledge the wound and start the healing. Just like an alcoholic, has to admit that they have a problem with alcohol to be able to start their own healing process. And it's about soul healing. And so as a collective, it is time to take the red pill. And as personal healing, it is soul tending, knowing that we are going through some difficult times and we are dancing with our shadow. Pluto is in retrograde. When Pluto goes retrograde, we do dance with our shadow. Our shadow pieces come up for us to look at and to heal. And I just going to say I had an experience recently that I can share with you, where I was carrying a lot of anger, and I just was so angry. And a friend of mine, talked to me, and we talked about it, and she explained to me, she said, you are contributing to the anger in the world, and that I was putting anger in the field. And she said, is that what you want to put in the field? And of course not. And so I really had to look at my anger, and I had to recognize what I was holding. Anyway, it was really good to have a friend that spoke to me like that. And I want to show you one more thing here on screen share, that is an image that that is a soul collage, and I call this trust. And it really feels to me like this is where I am. This may be where a lot of people are, is where we're really looking into the depths of our own soul. And we're kind of hanging by a thread there, trusting that we don't fall in, but that this is coming. There are things coming to the surface, our own inner volcanic energies. And so how do we manage them? Because it is our shadow. We're getting to look at those parts of ourselves that we would rather not look at. And yet that is the old emotional patterns that want to be released, and that's part of this shamanic healing and the soul tending. The other piece of this, yes, and there's one more piece, and as I talked about the red pill, a big piece that keeps us into the programming is judgment and fear. And that, and as these opportunistic power grabs are happening, it feels to me like this is about control, controlling us through fear. And one of the ways fear shows itself is through judgment of self, judgment of others. And so as we awaken, we no longer feel the need to judge others that are still sleeping. So yes, when we take the red pill and we can wake up and recognize that others are still asleep, that that is their journey. And being in judgment does not, well, we don't have any desire to, because we understand, we actually approach it with compassion and hope that someday that the awakening will happen for everyone. Another piece of this shamanic journey is as everything is breaking down, it is about death, transformation, and rebirth. And we're not at the rebirth yet. We're still in the breakdown phase. But in the breakdown phase, it is the seeds of the rebirth. And we move into what's called Kairos time, which is magical time. And so we actually are between the worlds. The world that we have known is not coming back. And the more we try to hold on to things that aren't working, the more they're just not going to work. And so we're given this opportunity, if we can settle into it in some way, to reimagine, to vision the world that we want, because we know everything is created on the etheric realm before it is created on this realm. And the indigenous elders say that we have been dreaming the wrong dream. This is going to give us some time to dream the right dream, to dream the dream of the world that we want, not the world that we don't want. And so it's like, once again, on a collective level and on a personal level, setting that intention, putting that prayer in motion, getting behind our prayer and letting our prayer lead the way, knowing that we don't know exactly where we're going, because we always need to leave space for spirit. We can only plan so much, and at some point there has to be some trust. There not has to be, but there is. When we trust, we can just allow the energy to flow in, and basically get on that surfboard and ride that wave, because it's with that trust that we actually do ride the wave. And this also leads us into back to the power of words and things that we can actually do to help this process. And so the first is to use positive words. First thing in the morning, as you get out of bed, have a positive thought. It can change your whole day. I start every day with saying thank you. That's always the first words out of my mouth. So I say thank you, thank you, thank you for this beautiful day. And I say thank you all day long. Thank you, gratitude. The words of gratitude have the power to change our attitude. And when we change our attitude, we change our world. I also heard Bruce Lipton talk. He said, to fake it till you make it. Say every day, when you say I am beautiful, I am love, I am happy, and whatever it is, those are my words. You can say whatever it is. And I was reading a text today, actually it was the words of power, that anything you say after I is God, and to know it helps you know that you are God. And so it is the words of power. It is prayer, being grateful. And the other thing is, of course, about being grounded and connected to Mother Earth. She is our guide. And finding your center. And always when I pray, she always tells me to find my seat, to hold my seat, and that her lap can hold me as we move through these really challenging times. And someone gave me the link for a movie called The Earthing, and it is a book, and I'm going to be reading it, but they talk in the video about the importance of walking on the ground with our bare feet. In these times, that is the best way to stay connected to Mother Earth, is to stay grounded, and to sit in her lap and be out in nature as much as you possibly can, because we are going through these times of great crisis, but great change and things. And in this in between space, we really can change the world and our lives. So I want to say thank you for showing up today, and and I'm so grateful I'm able to share this piece of the wall of the pyramid text and these words of power, and remembering how powerful our words are. All right, thank you.